This is a song that I've been listening to recently. It came out 6 days ago, apparently, or at least this video for it. And this is how I first discovered it. This is by Flagboy Giz, We Outside. And this is important for context. For those who want to know, he's dressed in New Orleans Indian attire. Due to how Native and Black people mixed in Louisiana, a lot of folks got Native ancestry. So in New Orleans, people dress in ceremonial Native attire to keep up the history. Recently, some African traditional clothing has been mixed in too, so now it's just a beautiful combo of both cultures. Okay.
I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras Carnival in New Orleans. I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you so cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras Carnival in New Orleans. I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you so cold.
It's got that bounce beat to it where, and the like black and yellow along with it too.
Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. Mardi Gras, walking through the streets like I run a town. Don't blow your horn at me to move, drive around. We outside. I don't tell him he don't have enough on. I tell engines they look naked, I'm a whole park legend. We outside. I was making cars stop at the D shop. At the liquor store, I tell them who could go. We outside. Once we walk across the city, we gon' meet them all. The other engines, they be hopping out of U-Hauls. You a U-Haul engine, and I'm an old school engine. Walking across the city, you a U-Haul engine, and I'm an old school engine. Walking across the city, I'm buying feathers by the dozens just to play the dozens. Telling engines stare at me, they need to study. We outside. My suit shining blingers with the chief sing. I'm walking up the street, painted like Sting, painted like E.
The look
Don't let me
is
get behind you, coming with a cloud of ganja. I
superb.
Thomas walking to South Liberty. I told the engine
All the
I'm too pretty for you to
feathers,
be
the
ripping me.
detailing.
St. Joseph night, no killing me. I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras Carnival in New Orleans. I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you so cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras Carnival in New Orleans. I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you so cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. Walking through the smoke of the Kawasaki's. Everybody come see me, man, like we the Jabberwockies.
Okay, pausing it because I remembered maybe I should do this so I avoid copyright strikes. Looking at you, YouTube. I don't know if I've waited too long, though. Oh well, this is the attempt. Look at all of this. Stunning. Well, hello. Cos tan sin. Cosine tangent sine. Am I saying that right? Look at the lime green, now known more as like a brat green, and also this like Kelly green. Love.
It ain't no competition, it ain't fair. Tell them inches how they dead on they porch stairs. They say I do the most. I got the stones on my glove like Thanos, walking past the floats. You know what make me happy? When I be walking with a hatchet in a third wall looking for Apache. It's a sight to see, Flagboy crossing magazine, full magazine. Chief say, tell a spy bone to the mouth of me.
Okay, I did like a couple of pronunciations, so it might be different next time. How are you doing?
So when you see him with a bucket, boy, they toe down. Just knowing Carnival Coronas when they go down. I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras Carnival in New Orleans. I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you so cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras Carnival in New Orleans. I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you so cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl.
Braids, the dollar bills, not having any dead presidents on them, no colonizers. Looks like someone in a headdress.
I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras Carnival in New Orleans. I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you suit cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras. Carnival in New Orleans, I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you suit cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl.
Amazing. There he is again. Legendary equipment after defeating the final boss. Clicked for the outfit, stayed for the song. Yes. Bounce music was the last thing I would have expected. Wasn't even on my radar, actually. Every feather, stone, bead, and fabric is hand sewn, constructed to tell a story. This song gave us so much joy after the pandemic. So proud to see him here. So I guess the song came out after the pandemic. This is the first that I have heard of it. It was earlier this week. Liking. Okay. Continuing with talking about culture and its influence on politics influencing culture, especially as we are considering the late stage capitalism, white Christian nationalism, fascism that is happening in the US where I am located, but also how that is outsourced, especially through violent means, especially lately, with imperialist aggression inflicted on the world that is illegal and immoral and needs to be stopped. If you're interested in joining a world strike to stop all of the bullshit happening around the globe, do fill out the form in my Twitch profile where you can sign a strike card and submit demands. Because if we're going to stop the world and ask for the things that we need to take back power from this Epstein class, what should we be asking for? We shouldn't limit our imaginations, because the white supremacists who are destroying the world, having all of this pointless, senseless, cruel death and destruction, they have a limitless imagination, it seems, for accomplishing their nefarious ends. And we have something way better to fight for, which is humanity, people caring about human beings, empathy. This is what makes us strong, despite all of their claims to the contrary. And we can show this through solidarity and withholding our labor so that we can take our power back. Anyway, moving along. This is FD Signifier, and he streams on Twitch, so go check him out as well. And this is a section from his stream that I saw he uploaded a little bit over a week ago. Did the CIA kill rock music? I think the answer to this is yes. There is a reason why people who are not more revolutionary and radical in the music industry do not get elevated to these levels of extreme prestige and honor, because the people that control these systems, the award systems, the music industry, are capitalists who are also aligned with these fascist powers. So
has a great video about Eminem,
or they just are fascists
a
themselves.
more important cultural figure than we give him credit for, specifically for white males. It's called The Eminem Size Hole in White America. This is a great video. Shout out to Melon. Melon also just did a take on this morning that I watched that made me want to compound on it.
I'm gonna get another drink real quick.
There was a time where the cultural zeitgeist of white American men was not dominated by the likes of Andrew Tate, Aiden Ross, this clavicular guy that I can't escape hearing about. That was not what white American men's cultural icons were like modeled after. They tended to model themselves after rock stars, rebels. You might even say, to an extent, revolutionaries. Not really.
back.
Obviously, there was obviously always the presence of white supremacy to mitigate how somebody like Bruce Springsteen or what's the Gone in the USA? What the hell is that dude's name? Bruce Springsteen. Did I just say that? There was a time where this working class anti-imperialist image of Americana mythology was much more dominant. Now understand, this is always still a lie, but it was a lie more amenable to liberation activity than what we're dealing with now. Yeah, right here. I love this line here. Got a little hometown jam, so they put a rifle in my hand, send me off to a foreign land to go kill the yellow man. So that is an anti-war message in one of the most popular songs in American history, done by a straight white man.
Yeah, and it's also really
right
racist.
That there were like heterosexual white men preaching anti-imperialism in America at the highest levels of popularity. We fast forward to today, and this image of American mythologized white masculinity is gone. The image of white masculinity does not look like this anymore. Why is this white masculinity and not masculinity? Because white masculinity is a very specific thing. White masculinity is the hegemonic ideal of what masculinity is supposed to look like, and thus has the most influence. And so you've always had images of black
and is accepted, bought into by colonizers. They outsource this with violent means, usually supported through a type of nationalist religiosity and desire for expansion that are very harmful, especially as they are creating these hierarchies of human dignity and forcing them upon people who are not consenting to them.
Aesthetics, those still haven't went away, even if they're not genuine or like all that aggressively revolutionary. Right now, Kendrick Lamar is an example. And so here comes Billy Corgan. Billy Corgan is kind of a piece of shit. He's not the worst guy, but he's just kind of the epitome of like an out of touch rock guy that thinks he knows everything. He's done some weird right-wing stuff. I think he was Diet MAGA at a certain point.
I don't know who this is.
That'll come correct me. This take here does kind of show my point though, because this take is laced with a lot of microaggression, a little quiet racism, but it's getting to an interesting point.
Find it strange that rock, which has been the dominant social changing force of the 20th century, has been essentially sidelined, and my argument is on purpose. I think that rock has been purposely dialed down in the culture.
When would you say that began? Mid-2000s?
Late 90s. All I know is I saw the gravity shift, okay? If you were at MTV or around
Smashing
MTV
Pumpkins
1997,
guy.
98,
Oh, that explains why I don't know
rock
who
was
that
out.
is.
Right.
Thank
when
you.
rock was still
Right.
very, very high up in the thing. And it was replaced by rap.
Right.
They immediately changed the way their standards and practices immediately shifted.
Right.
So now that things that weren't allowed were suddenly allowed, people were waving guns. Okay. So some people assert that the CIA was involved in all
That's
that.
not a
Again, above my pay
microaggression.
grade,
That's
but
just
I saw it happen.
that's
I did witness it
overtly
happen.
racist.
Okay. And then now, as you pointed out, rap seems to be waning in terms of its cultural influence.
Right.
Pop is completely dominant. Rock is probably the most dominant ticket selling thing in the Western world, and yet there's almost no representation of rock in culture.
Right.
So why do we have that schism? I think they purposely dialed down the ability of rock stars to have a voice in the culture.
All right. I want to engage with this take critically without being reactionary and bring up some things I haven't heard talked about yet. So first off, let's ease away from conspiratorial thinking and just point out some of the flaws in his logic. The CIA has always had a hand in moving the cultural zeitgeist away from liberatory or revolutionary activity, right?
Yes.
And it is very obvious right now that, as I just said, rock music
Working in concert with, pun intended, Working in concert with the very fascist capitalist forces of the music industry, controlling what is popular, what makes money, whose voices, whose art is elevated to the top, who has opportunities, and then who is rewarded based off of these opportunities so they can perpetuate the same system.
Does not have a huge level of relevance in the American cultural zeitgeist. It does not. It's still very lucrative in its pockets, but it is not very relevant in the American cultural zeitgeist. I do not think that was a product of the CIA explicitly. I do not think the nebulous they, which is we always got to watch it when we start talking about the theys. I have a habit of doing it myself. We got to watch when we start talking about the
they,
theys.
thems.
The nebulous, mysterious they is almost always Jewish. And we got to be careful about being really too lackadaisical in that. Because that's what a lot of
that I'm really glad that he called that out as well. Of like when we are getting into conspiratorial thinking sometimes, or have the tendency to just say whoever is opposing us rather than calling out exactly who are in these kinds of parties where there are political forces, instead of acknowledging that many conspiracies come from anti-Semitism, and that there is a lot of that mostly being perpetuated by the white Christian nationalists in power. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that Nazis are doing Nazi shit? Anyway, yes, I'm glad that he pointed this out.
Me, especially a guy that once went on Alex Jones's podcast. Be careful when we blame them. But what we do recognize, and what I want to try to illustrate in this video, is that a materialist analysis, and I am not the king of dialectical materialism, and I'm probably going to fail this on multiple levels, an analysis of the social forces in play here that trend towards capital, trend towards empire, trend towards white supremacy, are the reason why a multitude of different entities have created the current situation that we're in. Create a situation where rock music can still be incredibly popular, can still be incredibly lucrative, but not part of the relevant zeitgeist for the Western world. Let's first debunk a couple of things. Billy Corgan says that it happened in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I don't think that's true. Fantano pointed out that Billy Corgan just marked the point in which Smashing Pumpkins stopped being relevant and said, oh, that must have been it.
Yeah,
no,
that's
I was
a coincidence.
there in 2001 blasting Hybrid Theory. I didn't do this on purpose, but I got my Bring Back New Metal shirt on right now. We're talking about Hybrid Theory, Linkin Park. We're talking about System of a Down. We're talking about Puddle of Mud, even though I didn't really like them.
Okay. Pausing real quick. Some metal bands the editor can think of off the top of his head that were popular in the 2000s. Not necessarily endorsing all these. Okay. Slipknot, Korn, Converge, Tool, Type O Negative, Every Time I Die,
Songs for the
Lacuna
Dead,
Coil,
from
Mastodon,
Queens of
Lamb
Stone
of
Age,
God.
Deftones, Evanescence.
Yeah. Avenged Sevenfold, Cold Chamber, Children of Bodom, Opeth.
Biscuit, Smash Mouth. We're talking about Disturbed. Yeah, My Chemical Romance. I feel like that's like 2000. Am I tripping? Or was that like 2007? That album, even though that was not even like my thing, I was kind of not really a big emo fan. But Black Parade and Panic at the Disco are both late 2000s that like reverberated for years. I could agree with Corgan and say that maybe in the late 90s, we started seeing the shift. But rock music and punk and emo and metal and...
Oh, so we're getting the punk ones now. The editor providing even more.
Groove and all these other things are still alive and kicking by the late 2000s. Paramore is another one. I'm gonna tell you when I know rock music was done though. I knew rock music was done when Madden stopped having rock music. So let's see. All right, it looks like by 2014, we didn't have a lot of metal or rock music in Madden. That was a perfect reflection of the normie aesthetics of music. What people don't realize is that up until the late...
That's a really great observation as well, is that whatever is in these popular video games, also in movies at the time as well, that is a marker of what is currently accepted in the culture and what is mainstream, especially. And then when we see shifts there, it's like, okay, this is marking a moment in time.
Hip hop was still being actively repressed until the late 90s. In a weird way, it's probably the death it's the death of Tupac and Biggie and the rise of Puffy that brings hip hop fully into the mainstream. Hip hop had been around and had been strong for well over a decade at that point.
I agree.
But like VH1 still didn't play rap music. There were still black radio stations across the country that refused to play rap music. Even in the mid 90s, it was still being treated as a fad or as this like too violent, too wicked thing. So by early 2010s, we are seeing that shift happening. And I will agree with Corgan that the shift started in the late 90s. But it didn't start because of the CIA or some secret nebulous them. That's not really what happened. What happened is this. This is my second time bringing this up in content recently because I talked about this in the conservative cult video. The Telecommunications Act of 1996, signed by Bill Clinton, allows for the
conservative cult video is one that I've watched on the stream. That I've also, I think, is uploaded to YouTube if you're ever wanting to rewatch that. But if not, just watching the video on its own of his is really good. I highly recommend it. It gets into a lot of really important things that are happening now and how we've been led to this moment.
Foundation of power of American media across the board, TV and radio specifically, and newspapers, which led to the rise of large corporate radio giants and many of the locally owned radio stations getting bought up in the process. What you missed before 1996 is if you own 5 or 6 stations, you had to have individual program directors for every one of the stations you own. And what happened after that, when you have 100 stations owned, corporate America hates duplication in jobs. So they fired all the local program directors and put one person in an office in New York or Atlanta to program all the stations. The deregulation in our media allowed for the consolidation of corporate interest in music. And yeah, and they're doing that to the internet now. And whatever we make up next.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. A marker of fascism being corporate private interests ingratiating themselves with the government then also benefiting from these contracts and deals that happen. So the oligarchy has been existing for a while that we've been living under. There is a reason why we got to this point, because this has been the case in capitalist America, where with the free market, the capitalists are controlling much of what happens politically, if not everything that happens politically, or most of the time.
They'll do it to that as well. If you were a band in a local scene in Atlanta, in Chicago, if the local radio picks you up, you suddenly had radio airplay, and it wouldn't be nationwide, but it would be enough to pull and create these ebbs and flows of sound. And so these bands from all these different parts of the country would then tour. I don't know if local radio played Slipknot in Iowa. I don't know nothing about Iowa. I'm pretty sure Slipknot was percolating in Iowa before it made it anywhere else. I didn't hear about Slipknot till I got to Atlanta. But when everything is consolidated, the art stops becoming the bottom line. The bottom line starts becoming the commerce. But it's also what music is effective enough to be popular to the largest amount of people. And it wasn't hip hop as we think about it today with your NBA YoungBoys and your JPEG Mafias and your Billy Woods or even your Kendrick Lamars. It was basically setting the stage for the Flow Riders. This is why Ja Rule dominated the mid-2000s. This is why 50 Cent eventually dominated again. Hip hop had already appealed to white kids in the suburbs.
Yes, it's because in this system that we know as capitalism and white supremacy, these colonizer sensibilities to support colonizer policy and domination, that they elevate people who are beneficial to their system. And talent, a lot of the time, does not rise to the top, despite what the people at the top would like to think about themselves.
Already was. Hip hop obviously appealed to black people across the country. But Kanye made hip hop not just cool but highbrow. Kanye made hip hop art. Wayne is also there serving the other side of the equation. But Kanye made hip hop art and made hip hop suitable for music, journalism, all the stuff that goes with that. There's an explicit class dynamic here, because a lot of rock music was still very much
class.
white working class.
Until it's accepted into a higher class,
working class,
the capitalist
but
class.
The music itself was still fundamentally anti-imperial, anti-capitalist on so many levels. And so now all of these different parts of the music zeitgeist culture are focused on hip hop. You have your Wayne on one end, your Kanye on the other end. Wayne is now doing rock songs. Wayne releases a whole rock album and starts skateboarding. Suddenly, there's not as much room for rock music. In the cultural zeitgeist, it's still there, but the cultural zeitgeist of it all starts to dissolve. If there is a element of conspiratorial thinking that I will say is very plausible, it's that when you see the response to George Bush 1, when you see Incubus and Green Day and System of a Down, and still at that time even Rage Against the Machine, going against the Iraq War, I do think there is a concerted corporate and systemic interest in removing that from the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, the anti-establishment.
You see rock music doing in the mid to late 2000s what it's done throughout American history, agitating against empire. I do think there is an effort by corporate interests to say, we're gonna back, somebody pointed out 50 Cent. 50 Cent is doing whole military propaganda. 50 Cent, oh my God, he's creating cover-based shooters where he's fighting terrorists. Do y'all see this? I'm sure this wasn't created by 50 Cent, but you get my point. I wanna watch this video though. Let's watch and react to this. From what I saw of this, I'm wondering where he's gonna go.
Today I want to talk about the reaction to what Billy Corgan had to say. A lot of articles mocking him, dismissing him, picking apart his later career albums instead of engaging with what he actually...
So I want to be clear. After seeing details from the Epstein files, it is no longer perfectly logical to just dismiss conspiracy theories outright. But when you start getting into wizards and men behind the curtain, you're allowing corporate interest and capitalism of it all off the hook. That really bothers me. It really bothers me that people are more comfortable and more attuned to saying there's a mysterious evil person or group controlling everything than to just say MTV changed their standards and practices because they knew would make them more money.
Great music came out of the genre.
Well, you know, these things can be true at the same time. I mean, not to just say that, like, there are all these people controlling the world, like he said. Getting into that mindset is a lot of the time deeply anti-Semitic, but acknowledging that there are people who are in this elite class that are capitalists and operating with these supremacist frameworks that then dictate world events and markets, that is real. The disproportionate amount of wealth and power that is enabled through capitalism, that is capitalism, gives them this power of dominance that they force on other people. And it's not because, like, it's just Jeffrey Epstein controlling the entire world. He had a lot of influence, especially from what we've been seeing even more lately. He also was using all of these systems, like he and the people that were in his circle, people who interacted with him, used these systems for their beneficial gain. They're an inevitability of unchecked capitalism, not that they are controlling like this system of capitalism all on their own, that it is built to do what it's doing and they're exploiting everything.
Replace rock on TV. He wasn't trashing hip hop or pop by any measure.
He wasn't doing it like intentionally. He was doing it the way out of touch white rock stars and rich people tend to do, not thinking about the way their language lands. But maybe that wasn't his intention.
That the shift itself felt engineered, not organic. He also revealed that during the Bush administration, he was personally approached by elements of the U.S. government about participating in some sort of an influence campaign. He compared it to a scene from Eyes Wide Shut and declined to share specifics. He referenced claims by others that the CIA may have been.
I believe that's probably real. I believe it's probably.
Eyes Wide Shut is seems like very Epstein class shit. What did Stanley Kubrick know? He also directed the movie Lolita. We should be asking questions.
That Billy Corgan and Smashing Pumpkins were approached to do overseas military concerts. I can completely see that. Again, doesn't take a man behind the curtain. That's just good marketing.
In 2025, Hard Rock and Metal saw a 14% increase in attendance year over year, hitting an all-time high of 13% of all arenas and stadium shows.
So this is a point that Mellon made that I think debunks a lot of this. Look at how old this man is. Mellon made the point that, yeah, rock festivals are still making a lot of money because they're appealing to people who have money to spend.
These rock and metal festivals dominate globally in a way no other genre comes close to matching, whether it's Welcome to Rockville.
All right, so let's look at this. Are all people from my era of like popular rock music? Look at the headliners. The headliners, if you can't see this, Guns N' Roses, Godsmack, The Offspring, Foo Fighters. Yeah, most of these are very much my age range. All right, so same people: Tool, Limp Bizkit, Wu-Tang Clan, AFI. Like, I don't know if this proves this point very well. I think after a generation, I think a lot of young white men have abandoned rock music.
But the financial explanation doesn't account for everything. It doesn't explain why rock, a genre built on rebellion and anti-authoritarianism, seems to make institutions uniquely uncomfortable. It doesn't explain the streaming discrepancy.
So shout out to Rockfeed dude. I don't know this dude's name. I think he's doing a pretty good job overall. He's lacking, again, the anti-capitalist framework to which to analyze it from overall, but he's still hitting the main points. I'm gonna let him finish, and then I want to get into the anti-blackness of it all.
You don't have to believe that there's a psyop in your Spotify playlist, but the questions he's raising about the disconnect between rock's real-world demand and its cultural invisibility, about why certain genres are amplified seemingly and others are seemingly suppressed, these are legitimate and perfectly fair questions. And I think people should be skeptical when you're given a hard time simply for asking questions.
All right, so shout out to Dude. Here's the reason why Billy Corgan is getting ridiculed from my perspective. It's because Billy Corgan's framing of this very easily lends itself to culture wars nonsense, to great replacement theory nonsense, and less to actually what he's saying. He's providing
where it's pointing to the system rather than a group of people to blame. That there are capitalists who do benefit from this system.
Normie, this is good. Shout out to Dude. I hope more people watch that and catch those little nuggets he put in. But the bottom line is the corporate interests of it all do not desire to empower a cultural zeitgeist amongst normie white men that is against empire. When they have now the UFC and the manosphere, the podcast world that perfectly funnels these white men into these pockets of influence so that they'll join ICE. It disengages them from struggle and resistance ideology that they're already primed to not connect with to begin with because of the way white supremacy works.
Yes, exactly.
It's because Rage Against the Machine, yes, there are chuds that like Rage Against the Machine, but if you were listening to Rage Against the Machine during their heyday, you are not a chud. If you look at your hardcore white leftists now, those are punks. I'm not saying they weren't there. Rage Against the Machine is too awesome to be denied to any group. But you can't hear Killing in the Name of and be like, I wonder if I should join the army.
Yeah.
It's not completely abnormal. I think one of the System of a Down guys is a big MAGA weirdo, isn't he? Didn't somebody from System of a Down go like super MAGA? If I had to give one critique of whoever this man's name is, shout out to you again, Rockfeed News. This line right here triggered me. He just said this.
And I think people should be skeptical when you're given a hard time simply for asking questions.
I think people should be skeptical when you're given a hard time for just asking questions. Nah. Because just asking questions is how we get anti-vax. Just asking questions is how we get the...
We need to talk about Gamergate.
Which is another video I got to do. Because that's also happening around this time. Gamergate is a huge aspect of the...
I am excited to hear his take on Gamergate.
Shift for young white men. You can't just ask questions. You have to base it in a materialist analysis. Whenever normie white guys today weaned under podcast bro nonsense, under the current Rogan-esque nature of white male American zeitgeist, you can't just ask questions, because when people start to develop analytical explanations of these things, they can't displace whiteness at the center of it. They just assume that things are getting worse for them because it's getting better for other people. So the way Corrigan frames the issue is that, oh, this white-driven music genre, this white male-driven music genre, rock music, was this place to serve black people in hip-hop, and then women with pop music. That is the undertone of Corrigan's take. It may not have been a forethought for him. He may not have said that specifically to do those dog whistles, but that's where a lot of normies are gonna take it. And it needs to be understood that the same corporate forces that erase metal from the zeitgeist also greatly manipulated hip hop from its inception.
Yeah, exactly.
Hip-hop, almost from the beginning, was co-opted because of the fact, as the other guy alludes to, it was much easier to control and manipulate rappers than rock stars, just because of the station that these rappers had socioeconomically. So this video is about Kid and Play, who's just a really interesting hip hop act from even when I was a kid. Kid and Play were huge, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. And they disappeared because gangster rap beat them out. Being able to sell rap music to white kids in the suburbs is already the most important aspect of whether or not a hip hop act is successful by the mid 90s, if not earlier. This is why they kept looking for a Vanilla Ice and the Beastie Boys and eventually Eminem. And I need to be clear. I hope some of y'all watch this. I hope some of you white folks outside of my pocket watch this and hear me here. Any indication that implies that the CIA, which I'm not saying is not somewhat involved, but implies that these different confluence of forces removed rock music to hurt straight white men in order to benefit black people through hip hop is false, because hip hop was already driven by...
Yes, when the exact opposite is true. Basically, all American music, not all, but a good proportion of American music it originates from black artists and people who have then come in and co-opted certain sounds and then benefited from it. These, especially white people who have benefited from doing this. It's like it is directly inverting the situation, which is what these fascists do.
White dollars at this time. There's never been a point in hip hop's history where white dollars were not the key factor in success for rappers. So this is once again forces playing both sides of the table to create culture wars.
Exactly. Okay. Moving right along. I wanted to play this J. Paul song. He is a really great artist. He's a great musician and had some of his music leaked. So he and that stifled his career a lot. He's a British Indian musician, and he has some great music, so let's check it out. This is BTSTU.
Don't fuck with me, don't fuck with me. Since you shut my eyes out to see it, I never knew where I was going. I went where the water was flowing. I know I've been gone a long time, but I'm back and I want what is mine. I know I've been gone a long time, but I'm back and I want what is mine. This shit was the
I like those little like laser sounds that he adds in. He's a really great producer as well.
we went down together that night. I surfaced and never returned. For years I just cushioned the I know I've been gone a long time, but I'm back and I want what is mine. I know I've been gone a long time, but
I like the simplicity of the beat, just but he does a lot of layering that doesn't feel too heavy with these melodies that are happening and the vocals over it is so tastefully done, in my opinion.
back and I want what is mine. So don't try and fuck me about. You're wasting your run.
Like those little synths so light in the background. It's just all so intentional.
I'm tired and I'm to get cold. I know I've been gone a long time, but I'm back and I want what is mine. I know I've been gone a long time, but I'm back and I want what is mine.
Oi.
I know I've been gone a long time, yeah. I back and I want what is mine, yeah.
Ooh, those are cool in the chat. Hey, that's J. Paul. He's very talented. One of my favorites of his is called Straight Out of Mumbai. It's an excellent song. I'll have to play that sometime. This is an Iranian folk song that I wanted to play before we get into the reading to show the rich culture, the many rich cultures that exist in Iran, putting things into perspective of what's happening in the world. Let's learn more about this art. There's so many people. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Incredible. The bright colors that are incorporated in their looks. Love. What is this song? Oh, whoops. Called again. Here we are. English subtitle added. When you put politics and religion aside, the beauty and values of every culture can be enjoyed and admired. True. You're changing the timing.
آدرس خونت شد دادن مهندم تو نخوبی آدرس خونت شد دادن مهندم تو نخوبی یارم هندن از سفر مگه اونین خبر یارم هندن از سفر مگه اونین خبر هوای بنده چه گرمن تبرم بالای کپر هوای بنده چه گرمن تبرم بالای کپر.
In the call and response. fierce.
دلبرم مکناز با گرمای بندر بساز دلبرم مکناز با گرمای بندر بساز اگه ناتونی بسازی تفرستم به شیراز اگه ناتونی بساز تفرستم به شیراز پشت باغ مولوی.
All right. That's the Rastak music group.